Good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Rachel Christensen. I have muted everybody now so that we can begin our worship service. I'm glad you've joined us today. We're going to begin with our music director, David Chapman, playing Listen by Bob Seger.
Thank you, David. David just played for us from the sanctuary of our beautiful, beloved Paint Branch home, which was built on the ancestral grounds of the Piscataway people. We are told that our grounds was a particularly good site for wintering because it sits relatively low, protected from winter winds, and has a source of fresh water. Welcome to worship at Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church. I am Tricia Most, one of the worship associates who plans in collaboration with Reverend Rachel Christensen. I'm happy you chose to be here with us this morning as we explore mindfulness and deep listening. If you're using Zoom this morning, please run your cursor around the perimeter of your screen to find the microphone icon and be sure to remain muted throughout the service so we can hear all the speakers, David Chapman's piano, Diana McFadden's cello, and Renee Katz's singing clearly. By moving your cursor around the edges of your screen, you may also find the option for switching between gallery view and speaker view. Clicking on the bubble icon opens up the chat screen where you can read timely messages during the service from our assistant church administrator, Phil Brown. Right now, I invite you to type into chat how many people are viewing from your screen. Please type 1 if it's just you. Later in the service, you will be invited to use the chat feature to post your joys and sorrows. If you are new to worshiping here, and you would like to meet our minister, Reverend Rachel Christensen, you can send a private chat message to her by changing the chat option from everyone and scrolling down to find Rachel Christensen's name. Clicking on her name will allow you to the option of privately providing her with your contact information so she can contact you later. After the conclusion of this worship service, you will have the option of staying on Zoom to join a small chat group, which is our way of having a virtual coffee time since we cannot chat together in the lobby of our sanctuary. People some me how they can access a recording of a worship service they have missed. Now I have an answer. It turns out that Paint Branch has its own YouTube channel. Each of our online services from the past 2 months is posted there. Go to YouTube and search for Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church, and you'll find them. The Social Action Committee invites you to suggest a recipient for the November 2020 special collection. Please send the reason you are suggesting a recipient along with their contact information to Carmelita Carter Sykes and/or to Kathy Bartolomeo before October 17th. You will find their email addresses in the Continuum article by clicking on Continuum at the bottom of the order of service. Thank you to all the Paint Branch who have begun bidding on our 2020 autumn auction catalog. Our first live auction event is 1 week from today on Sunday, October 18th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By clicking on the continuum of the order of service, you will find the auction article and the catalog web address and other auction details. Additional auction donations are still welcome. At this time, Reverend Rachel Christensen will call us into worship.
Thank you, Tricia. Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you today. I am the Reverend Rachel Christensen. I'm minister at Paint Branch. Listening to Tricia talk about the auction, I'm realizing how hard it is to get information, to for people to know what has been happening, what is going to happen. Because we're not actually in the sanctuary rubbing elbows with each other and seeing the activity and busyness in the foyer, we sometimes miss those announcements. So I would just say it's more important than ever to, read the continuum, read the branches, talk to people. I don't really know what else we can do, communicate in 7 different ways. So the auction is coming, and that's fun and important to the financial life of the church, and we hope you'll be able to participate. I'm watching the course of the hurricane coming across the country and remembering those days in Florida. It looks like we're going to get a good bit of rain out of that, and I'm feeling for the people down in Louisiana who have been hit twice in a row in too short of a time period, and hoping they are managing through this well. I'm reading this morning, this week, the Nobel Committee announced prize winners for the Nobel Prizes, and in a number of cases, women were named as a counter story to the vast prevalence of Western white men winning the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize for Literature was won by Louise Gluck, an American poet. And something she wrote in her American Originality Essays on Poetry is this: nothing in the past can be changed or restored, but the present it is thought about. In this new enactment, presence can replace absence, which is the best that can be managed in human time. And now Tosha O'Neill will light our chalice.
Good morning. I light today's chalice mindfully and with intent. Please join me in saying our chalice lighting words. We light the chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind, the helping hands, the loving heart, and the radiant spirit. En este cáliz para celebrar el unitarismo universalísimo. Esta es la iglesia de la mente abierta, de las manos amigas, del amor del corazón y del espíritu radiante.
Thank you, Tosha. Now let us join our hearts and minds in a time of prayer and meditation. As we gather in community, we carry with us our pain and our joy. Sometimes sharing these sorrows in community can help. You are now welcome to share your written joys and sorrows by typing them into the chat bar. As we share our personal sorrows and joys, our music director, David Chapman, will play You Opened Up My Eyes by Martin Lazelle. Thank you, David. May our hearts open to hope and healing. May our minds open to peace and possibility in this moment of quiet. Inspired by our Unitarian Universalist values, we strive to demonstrate more inclusive ways of being together and of responding to each other with love and kindness so that our congregation can be a source of strength and courage when we are in need of courage and hope. Sometimes we are frightened, uncertain, angry, or troubled, and we need reassurance. We listened to. May the people of this congregation be that source of compassion and acceptance in each of our lives so that we may all learn better how to care, how to give, and how to love. I asked David if we could have a soloist sing When I Am Frightened by Shelley Jackson Dunham, and Renee Katz answered the call. We will hear her sing now for us. Philip Brown will post the lyrics for us on the screen, and you can sing along if you like, but please stay muted as we hear Renee Katz sing When I Am Frightened. Thank you, Renee. When I gave birth to my first child, The hospital gifted me with a box of sample baby supplies that included an advertisement for the Parents Read Aloud book club. I subscribed, and every week we received 2 children's books, and we accumulated quite a quantity of books before I eventually donated them. The characters in these books were all animals or white people. That it is only upon reflection that I am mindful of the lack of diversity in this very large collection of books designated for parents to read aloud to their children. Upon reflection, I realized this was an example of racial exclusion. It may as well have been called the Read Aloud Book Club for white people. Another form of exclusion was that the vast majority of the animals and the human characters were male. I'm going to tell you a story as best remembered by my daughter and me. My daughter Nicole agreed that I should retell the story with a meaningful message. The basic story remains the same. One pleasant summer night, there was a lovely, gentle breeze. So the old white man opened wide his bedroom window. He was tired and settled down to sleep. A cricket was just outside his window. The cricket began to do the most natural thing in the world. He began to joyfully and freely sing his cricket song. The old man wanted silence, and he was used to getting his way. He rose from the bed and went to the window, and he said, "No more singing." And the joyful cricket, who couldn't imagine that anyone would object to the most natural thing in the world, a cricket raising his voice freely in joy, answered the old man. The cricket said, "More singing? You want more singing? Okay, I will invite a friend to join me." And now there were 2 crickets doing the most natural thing in the world, raising their voices in freedom. But the old white man, who was used to getting his way, was very annoyed by their presence at his window. And he said again, "No, more singing." And the first cricket said, "More singing? You want more singing? Okay, we will invite our friends to join us." And this went on as each singing cricket invited another friend to join them, and soon there was a multitude of crickets singing their cricket songs in joy and freedom. And of course, their singing became louder and louder and more difficult to ignore. In the end, the old white man slams shut his bedroom window and lays in bed with a pillow over his head. And the huge crowd of joyful crickets continue doing the most natural thing in the world, singing in joy and freedom. Remembering this story with my daughter made me think of the protesters all over our country and all over the world, growing in numbers to protest the public murders of people of color by police, to protest police brutality, and to protest acts of terror directed at people of color that occur every day in our country. You may think the idea of joyful crickets is not an appropriate metaphor for protests. But during the family worship service on September 26th, I listened to Margaret Morrison talk about 500,000 people who joined together to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama in 1963. She said that they were joined together in determination rather than in fear. She said, "We were smiling, white, black, Jews, straight, gay. All were united In the pursuit of equal rights and freedom, Margaret Morrison spoke about many things in that family worship, including about the encouraging messages she received from her mother as she was growing up. Messages that I believe helped to shape her into the leader, educator, activist, and inspiring role model that she is for our congregation and for all who know her. Many of us are mindful that freedom is not distributed equally in America. Perhaps the most natural thing in the world we can do is to let our voices be heard, to make our plans and carry out our plans to vote as early as we can in support of more freedom for all. Let us not slam down the window. Let us open the window wide and let the dove fly in. At this time, we will hear Renee Katz sing verses 2, 3, and 5 of hymn 1022, Open the Window, by Elise Witt. Philip Brown will post the lyrics for verses 2, 3, and 5. So if you like, you can sing along, but please keep yourselves muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee, for your incredible singing and beautiful music. And Tricia, for your very appropriate guidance and story. And it was interesting, those books, too, another disturbing reminder of what led to our situations today. Um, Also, Tricia's story happens to be a perfect story in a way to segue for me into my story, which is a more personal one-on-one experience I had with another guest at a party. Tricia described the story of the cricket opening the window and the beautiful singing, which reminded me of how much I love to open the window on a summer night, or any night really, except the coldest winter, and hear the sounds of nature and the forest and the quiet, the crickets. So I am called to discuss our topic, which is deep listening and talking. Deep listening, mindfulness, and deep listening. I am one of I'm Diana McFadden, and I am one of 8 worship associates serving our Paint Branch community. The question has an appropriate acronym, WAIT. Why am I talking? WAIT, which reminds us to think before we talk and listen mindfully and deeply. I liken a good conversation to a good jam session in which every musician is listening to the others as much as they are playing, or perhaps they're even playing less, because often less is more in the music world. And I'd say the same is true in conversations among people, whether it be friends or business partners or anything. Everyone is connected when this happens by mindfulness and deep listening, because everyone gives, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, whether it be a group of musicians, friends, or strangers who just met at a party. Before I begin my story, I want to share a quote from the song Uncle John's Band by the Grateful Dead, which I will play later this morning. The quote is, "I got me a violin, and I beg you call the tune. Anybody's choice, I can hear your voice. Now, what I want to know is, how does the song go? Think this through with me. Let me know your mind. Here now, what I want to know is, are you kind? Come here, Uncle John's Band, by the riverside. We've got some things to talk about here beside the rising tide." Now, this song is made to discuss specific issues, as well as sharing pleasantries by the riverside. Several years ago, at a friend's party, I overheard another guest mention having the loudest pipes at a motorcycle event. He was referring to the exhaust pipes of his motorcycle. Some motorcyclists choose to add aftermarket tweaks, which make the machines even louder. They have various reasons for doing this. I have always experienced loud motor noises, especially, as an assault on the senses that is stressful and painful to endure. The noise provokes dogs to bark as if responding to a threat of some sort, and it denies us the peace and quiet or the songs of nature and crickets on a summer night, all of which I would say are essential to health. Medical studies confirm that loud noise can harm health. Vehicles do not need to be nearly this loud. Some believe the loud pipes save lives, but this theory has been largely discredited even by other motorcyclists, as accidents often happen before noise is ever noted, so the noise does not protect the rider. It is more likely to startle and confuse drivers. So the noise is an imposition that shreds the peace and causes stress without the benefit of even the safety of the rider of the loud machine. So hearing this, I was called to meet this guest who was a complete stranger and try to share and impart a message of how a single loud motor might affect the health and peace of other living beings. But I knew I had to approach with an intent to know his mind and respect his dignity first. My message be taken as a mere imposition rather than a message to consider. So I approached him and we exchanged warm greetings, and already he was becoming a real person to me, not an annoyance making noise, as he welcomed me to join in our conversation. His name was Mike, and he was a neighbor of my friend's. I first asked him about the loud pipes, mentioning I'd overheard his conversation. I softened my entry with honest admiration for the beauty of some motorcycles and how well they are kept by caring owners. Later on, I described the effect of loud motors that they can have on others, and I asked him about the why of loud pipes. And he listened rather than argued. We listened to each other, genuinely curious to get into his head about this. Some really do feel that the noise protects them. And this wasn't the time to challenge that, even though I believe that part of it was just he, along with many others who do this, just like the noise as well. But what struck me was his warmth and willingness to hear another view, even one unfavorable towards his hobby. And I found myself enjoying hearing his expressions and stories. He had a wonderful down-to-earth way of speaking and talking about his family. I got a view into his life as I learned that he and his wife had 2 children when he called the sitter later on to make sure all was well with the kids. Our dialogue eased into sharing views and even a story or two rather than imposing them on one another. He had an adult son who'd just gotten a ticket for going 120 miles per hour on his motorcycle, one of those streamlined motorbikes we hear racing at night, higher pitched and also audible over a mile away, also stressful to hear. But I didn't get into that, drawing the line at overloading this gracious man with too much perceived criticism of their hobbies. I was, however, alarmed for his son's safety, perhaps even more so for having known a little bit of this man now. So I asked Mike if he ever worried about his son and his safety, ever more endangered at such speeds. Mike realized the danger, but recognized that accepting it was part of respecting his son's choice. It was not out of indifference. This man loved his son and would fight for his life, while also accepting his son's choices and whatever came with them. Law and safety factors are also concerns, but again, now is not the time to get into that discussion. Regardless, I cherish the memory of this conversation, which I was able to have with a complete stranger, thanks to his grace as well. He embraced a choice that challenged my ideas of peaceful living and regard for nature and community, but he also listened. That I could talk with him in this way was a gift from him, and I felt that we each came away with more from one another, not less. He gave me precious insights into his own life and an awareness and a sense that he had willingly received a view that challenged a passion of his, one that he practiced with no intention of harming anyone. He was a loving husband and father, a good neighbor to my friends, and a gracious man. Our brief time together gave me much more than he took, and he respected what I gave him. I still think of Mike and his family and hope they are happy and well, and I hope that his son is safe. I will close now by playing the song Uncle John's Band, and I will include with it an excerpt from the first suite of Bach's unaccompanied cello suites mixed into the middle. Maybe you will also agree that it is as if Bach and the Grateful Dead had heard each other across the ages and played together. Thank you.
you, Diana. To hear your wonderful cello and especially the interaction between Bach and the Grateful Dead. That was just delightful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So our president is a person who doesn't listen. Much of television is characterized by people who interrupt and talk over each other, who talk louder and louder, trying to get their piece said, their piece heard. As a culture, many of us interrupt, impatient to set someone straight, impatient to express our own righteousness, our clear understanding of the issue and the reasons why we have it right. Listening is hard. It requires us to be quiet, to hear another person's own sense of self and what they believe is true. If it extends to a conversation, want it to continue, sometimes it requires us to match the speaking of our partner, our conversation partner, or to speak more gently or perhaps more softly. I think it requires us to be intentional about our goal. I spoke with Amy Steiner, and she talked about a time when she was trying to get to know a new intern at her office. And she asked her lots of questions. She was Latinx, and Amy was asking her if she spoke Spanish at home. Amy had lots of questions about her family and her life. Amy said that she was thinking in her own head constantly about how to learn more and be friendly, learn more about the intern. It was only later that Amy realized that she had made this new intern uncomfortable, even scared about Amy's questioning of her. She says that if she had been really paying attention, she would have been more on her impact on the spirit and body language and the tone of voice of the intern, and would have noticed the intern's discomfort. Amy later apologized to the intern. They were able to start again, and they found a comfortable way to work together. I think about mindfulness as being present in the here and now. What is happening right now to me, to my physical responses, my emotional responses? What are the sounds I hear? The birds? Someone in the kitchen? Is it raining? Are people stirring? I remember in seminary, a class I took started with a period of mindfulness meditation each day, both in the morning and in the afternoon after lunch. We were asked to just be aware of our breath, of the sounds of the other students sitting with us in a circle, of how it felt to my physical and emotional feelings. The idea is that by practicing in meditation, we can learn to take this awareness with us into our day, into every encounter, every conversation. What I found is that I became more aware of things in my daily life, specifically my impact in my interactions with others. I began to see the role I played in those encounters. Rather than thinking of them as just happening, I played a role in how I engaged or failed to engage with others, being more or less available for a conversation, for a friendship. With practice, I can carry this awareness into ordinary life, all activities in life. In reality, for most of us, we are only doing this in brief moments. I think that mindfulness, however, may be necessary to the work of deep listening. From the website .org is this quote: "Deep listening is an ongoing practice of suspending self-oriented reactive thinking and opening one's awareness to the unknown and the unexpected." Many of us try to be really listening. I spoke with Janet Overton, and she said she tries to practice deep listening and pay attention to the other person's eyes, body, tone of voice, and the feelings behind the words. I think for most of us, we enter into a conversation intending to listen, but so often can only hold that open-heartedness, that curiosity for a little while before we slip into figuring out what we want to say. We are busy thinking about what we want to say. And the conversation moves into a place where we want to share our understanding, share our perspective. Suddenly, it's not about listening, but about convincing, asking them to listen to us. Well, of course, this is the normal rhythm of a conversation. You talk, and then I talk, and together we walk through a number of ideas. But with some people, maybe more often with our families, people hold ideas and opinions that are so divergent from my own and mine from theirs that many conversation topics just seem off limits. Janet said for many people, she wonders if the other person can really listen. The conversation may not be really worth the trouble. This is the moment when deep listening can help us. And it is a moment when we might rethink our goal. If on the spot, in the middle of the conversation, we can be mindful of a change in our noticing perhaps a quote, self-oriented reactive thinking, we might realize that sharing of our own positions would tend to cut off the conversation. Or we might decide that we should just cut off the conversation ourselves because it's just not worth it. We might say something that will be antagonistic. What if instead we could discard the goal to have a give and take conversation, but instead seek to develop a greater understanding of the person, to learn about their experiences and feelings and values? It would be a moment on the fly when we realize we want to change our intention about the conversation and might try to be just curious, to invite the other person to be heard. If we can engage in some of that, adopt a position of curiosity, suspending self-oriented reactive thinking and opening one's awareness to the unknown and unexpected. Ask curious questions, even when talking about issues we feel deeply about, maybe especially when we are talking about issues we feel deeply about. Like, how did you come to feel that way? What has your experience been with that? What does it mean for you? What about this seems most important to you? We can begin to explore feelings, experience, meaning, and values. Begin to establish trust. Amy Steiner told me of a time when someone on Facebook said, "I think Mr. Trump has actually done some good." Others on Facebook began to post harsh criticism and even name calling. Amy posted, "It's not helpful to call names." The original person thanked her for saying that. Later, the two of them were able to have a conversation that looked more deeply at their own thoughts and feelings. But first, they had to establish trust. And even then, it started with a curious question. Amy established trust by reaching out and saying, maybe this person has ideas. And then, once they had established trust, she started with a curious question. What would it take for you to reconsider your support for this person? First, she made a demonstration of trustworthiness, and then an invitation to dialogue with curiosity. Diana today told a story where she spoke with the motorcycle rider. She listened and made a connection. She was able to tell her story, challenging the idea of loud pipes. Once there was a sense of trust, of connection, when both people were willing to listen, then conversation can happen, sharing experiences, feelings, meaning, and values. But sometimes I know it's hard to get there. We are not all learning about the world from a common source. If I am watching Fox News and you are watching PBS, We would have very different ideas about how the recent Trump-Biden debates went. We would have a different sense about what the important moments were. In some ways, we wouldn't even share a common vocabulary. In these cases, the challenges are more significant. And sometimes this work of deep listening and trying to hold a place of curiosity is the work. Building trust is doing it. It is building a deeper relationship for you and for them, allowing a place of vulnerability to develop that can result in deeper conversations, deeper sharing. Sometimes it's sufficient to do just that, just listening with curiosity. Here at Paint Branch, we too sometimes fall short and fail to really hear each other. We fail to notice if our own body is telling us of our discomfort. We don't notice when the person we are talking to becomes less engaged or even distressed. We miss the chance to recognize our own role in these things. We are sometimes too busy talking to notice. We will disappoint each other. We have disappointed each other, but we can sometimes find the courage and opportunity to revisit those conversations. As Louise Gluck said, presence can replace absence. To apologize, to try to make amends, or to engage in deep listening, to deepen our relationships, our understanding of each other, our stories, feelings, places of meaning, and values. May it be so. And now join me in singing hymn number 1023, Building Bridges, as recorded by David Chapman and Renee Katz. We think the words will be shown on the screen and the music played at the same time. Phil has been working through the technology of it, and he thinks we have it right. Here we go.
Thank you, Renee. Today's Social Action Committee special collection is for Community Ministries County. CMPGC focuses on providing emergency assistance and other supportive services to people in Prince George's. You can mail your check made payable to CMPGC to CMPGC, P.O. Box 250, Upper Marlboro, Maryland, 20773. Or you can donate online at www.cmpgc.com. This Sunday's offering to Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church can be received as indicated in the chat bar. You can make online donations through Breeze or by text, and you can still mail donations. Our church depends upon the financial support of our members and friends. Please give as generously as you are able. Our worship associate, Diana McFadden, will now play on her cello Foray 1 and 2 from the third suite of Bach's unaccompanied cello suites.
Thank you, Tricia.
Bravo. Thank you so much for being with us
Very much.
today.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, each of you, for being here for our worship service. I invite you to think about how you might enter into conversations with this openness of learning and curiosity and awareness of your own effect on the conversation as it happens. We are going to do breakout rooms today, and I suggest that in a breakout that you accept the invitation to go to a breakout room. And while you're in there, you might share with each other if there is a time when you have been able to really deeply listen, even across deep difference. Please join me now in singing Fuente de Amor, Spirit of Life. David, you will have to, oh, you have unmuted yourself already. You are on it. David will play, and the words will be shared on your screen. Thank you.
As I extinguish this flame today, I hope you are able to carry the glow throughout your week.